Hey guys, we got another podcast. It's on with Christina. So this one has a problem. So the first 9 minutes, for some reason, I don't know why it got deleted. And this is probably from like 4 or 5 years ago. I didn't release it because, as you can tell, like stuff gets like really grainy. The video does, and sometimes the audio gets really messy. But I really want to release it now. But so what happened is I'm gonna edit in. So right after I'm done speaking now is gonna be her answer to when I asked what inspired and motivated you to get in shape, because I have her audio. For some reason, I don't have mine. And then I'm just going to cut to the other part right after she answers that's still working. So there's going to be a little glippy, but you'll be able to tell, and then we'll just go right into it. And yeah, so there's about 9 minutes missing, but yeah, she was just such a great guest, and I still, I've messaged her a few times, and when I do decide to come back, if I do, she'll definitely be one of the guests that I have on. But for now, just enjoy this. And again, I apologize for any of the audio video stuff that you'll be witnessing.
Well, I don't think it was ever, I just all of a sudden got into shape when I was younger, particularly in high school and middle school. I played sports. Um, it was just kind of my getaway, but I was also kind of a naturally gifted athlete as well. So I tried everything. Basketball. I'm 6'1", so naturally I would veer to basketball. I wasn't really that good at it, and I really didn't like it that much either. So I ended up going into track and field, which I excelled at, and I played volleyball as well, which I excelled at that too. I ended up getting a scholarship to go to college for track and field as well. I left that behind to join the military. And obviously, being in the military, the Army in particular, you have to have a pretty high state of physical readiness and physical fitness. And so that just kind of carried me throughout. I think after I had my son is when I really tried to look for another outlet. I'm a very competitive person by nature, and not having and being involved in sports and any type of extracurricular activity just kind of got the best of me. And so after my son was born, I looked for other avenues. I tried triathlons, and I did not like it very much. I like the train up, I think, more than the actual competition, but that was not for me. And I did a little bit more research, and I always was fascinated with bodybuilding. I actually followed it for many years. I would always buy the magazines. Ava Cowan was my woman crush for like ever, and then Nicole Wilkins and Candace Keen. Um, so I started looking into what bodybuilding was and what the NPC was and all the different federations that are out there. And while I was stationed in Texas, I found my first bodybuilding coach, and that's just kind of how I got started into the sport itself.
All right. Yeah, that is better again. So then I will just go ahead then in 3, 2, 1. But yeah, I mean, obviously there's a big thing when it comes to recruiting, and that's awesome that you're able to do that. But what really convinced you to want to join the military when you were in college? Because that's a thing that, I mean, if you were to ask 1,000 college students, you might get one of them that might be like, okay, yeah, I'll go join the military.
Yeah, it wasn't something I planned. Actually, it was kind of a funny story. Um, a recruiter came to my house one day. I actually missed him because I was at track practice. I ended up calling him back, wanted to listen to what he had to say. And at the time, it was for the National Guard, actually, for the Pennsylvania National Guard. And I I thought it would be really really cool to be a part of something so grandiose. It was just such a. My dad was a Marine. My grandpa was in the Navy, but we weren't like a military family per se. Um, it was kind of one of those things that it just happened. Everything just kind of fell into place. I felt like it was like my a calling and a purpose. And then after I went into basic training and AIT, which is our where we learn our skills, um, I fell in love with it. It just came very natural to me, and the Army had taught me so many skills and brought out a lot of my character and brought out a lot of my strengths, and just kind of took me as one of their own. And I didn't grow up with a very cohesive family. So it was kind of a way to get away from that as well. Um, and, and yeah, I remember after I was done with AIT, I went back to college, and I was doing my whole track thing. And then one day I was just like, I'm done with this. This is not for me. And I ended up signing up active duty and going to and getting stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia as my first assignment. And then shortly after getting deployed to Iraq. So yeah, it was just one of those things where it just felt right, just deep in my core. It just felt like the right thing to do. And the more I served and the longer I progressed through the military, it just became one of those things that I was like, I was just born to do it. And to serve this great country is one of the best things I think anyone could ever have the privilege of doing. Oh, I've been there several times. So I went there 2006, early 2006, until 2008, and then I went back again in 2008, later in the year until 2010, and then I went back just not too long ago.
Jeez. Yeah, that's, she's putting me to shame already, and we're only about 10 minutes into this podcast, everyone. So, I'm a history major myself, and yeah, my respect for the military. Yeah, I've always said that, that's they deserve so much more, and it's just ridiculous. And to have a veteran on here is just, it's a great thing to have, and just to help spread that message, because yes, so many people in this day and age. I mean, if you were to look at our grandparents' generation, where every single one of them served basically, yeah, and to look at where it is right now, it's a completely different thing. So that's so great that you're doing that, and thank you for your service. I know a lot of people probably get tired of hearing that, but I have to say that, because it's true, because as someone that has never served too, and I've talked to a lot of veterans on this podcast as well, and it's just what they do for this country. It's amazing, and it's a lot of times underappreciated, and I think they need to get a lot more recognition. But going into your bodybuilding journey, did that happen when you were in the Army, that you really decided that you wanted to get in shape during your first time, or that you really wanted to take things up a notch? Or was there a certain moment where you're like, hey, bodybuilding, I should give that a try?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for the kind words. That does mean a lot, and we don't really get tired of hearing it, but it's our privilege to serve. So, the decision to take on bodybuilding, like I said, it happened right after my son was born. Yes, I was active duty. I had just it was a year after I commissioned, so I commissioned as an officer, and I had my son, and I wanted to be involved in a sport. Like I said, I really didn't know anything about bodybuilding at the time. I was fascinated about it. I followed it, and I watched the Olympia all the time, and the Olympics. So that was kind of where my my scheme was. And like I said, I tried triathlons. That's just not my thing at all. I'm definitely stronger than I am. Than do I have endurance. So I just started doing some research, and I found a coach, and I was like, hey, I have nothing to lose. I can fit it into my schedule, or at least attempt to. I guess we'll talk about that later. And then, and I just went with it. I just went for it. I'm just the type of person, when I set my mind onto something, it's locked, it's dead. It's really hard to convince me out of something after I've already convinced myself that it's something I want to do.
And that is a mindset that I found is a common factor in a lot of bodybuilders, because it's not something that, a lot of people would want to sign up for if they knew really what it entailed. And that's just, that's great. But so many people, there's so many myths and misconceptions about bodybuilding. What was one that you had before you got started? Because almost every guest that we have on has something where they're like, they always think it's going to be something, but then it turns out to be a little bit different.
I don't think I was prepared for what actually went into it all. I think going into it, at the time I was already in the gym and I was working out, and I was fit according to military standards. I wasn't fit according to bodybuilding standards, clearly. So I think that was a real eye opener for me, that the different levels of fitness depending on any sport you're in, you might be a world athlete in one sport, but you go and try something else and you're the bottom of the barrel. And that was, I think, one of the things I took going in was like, well, I'm already fit. I can do this. And I pretty much eat healthy. I can do that too. But how intricate it was with your meal timing, your sleep, your stress, your supplementation, the types of workouts to do, when to do cardio, when to not do cardio. I mean, all these little things that go into the whole package was very far misunderstood by me before I went in.
Oh my God. I mean, yeah, you hit the nail on the head where it's just so many little things. And I mean, I like to sort of lead that off because I mean, I always say if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to, I mean, how many reps they do, what exercises they do, what their nutrition's like. So many little things add up to that overall package that people end up seeing. And a lot of people don't understand that. But when you were first getting started, what was that like sort of figuring out what works best for you? Because I mean, I sort of like to consider bodybuilders, especially like mad scientists, where they're just trying to find the right portions that work in the right amount. But what was that like when you first discovered that, like, hey, this is going to be a lot of trial and error for me?
Oh yeah, it was. It was overwhelming. It was information overwhelming my brain, and I have a master's in exercise science and nutrition, so I had that in my back pocket. But that doesn't have really much to do with the required nutrition for bodybuilding and like changing your physique and shift shaping. So I have a master's in something, and I felt like I only knew the basics for what I needed for bodybuilding. And so when I first started, I followed like bodybuilding.com online programs, and I kind of went through the motions. I think looking back, I kind of went through the motions. Like I definitely pushed myself and I did the best that I could. And I didn't listen to unsolicited advice in the gym, which is probably my biggest complaint. But for me, being so tall, it's mechanically different for me to perform an exercise than it is for someone who's 5'5" or 5'4". And I think that was one of the biggest hurdles that I had to figure out. And I'm still figuring those things out today, that, okay, the way that this exercise guru is performing a bent over row is not the same way that I can do it, because I'm built differently than him. And my mechanics are different. My angles are different. And so every exercise that I have to perform, I have to make sure that I'm modifying it to fit my body. And that's something that I always have to think about every time I step foot in the gym. And I build my own program. So every time I build my programs, I'm making sure that I'm doing something that is complementary to my physique and the way that I move, not necessarily what has worked for someone else.
I cannot tell you. I mean, I've been 6'3" since I was a freshman in high school. I was one of those early growers where then, I stopped growing then. But the first time I tried to do a squat, as opposed to my other friends that were like 5'5", 5'6", and it's a completely different story for everyone. It's just the amount of work that you have to put into it, because you have such a longer frame. You got to really fill it out more, where it's like, I've had bodybuilders on here that are like 5 feet tall, and, they just look like they can barely contain what they have, basically. But then if you ever get like that and you're over 6 feet tall, I want to talk to you then, because like it's like what the hell, basically. So yeah, I don't know, but I always say that everyone has, especially when they first get started working out, they always have that one body part that really, really takes off, and then they always have that one body part that just lags behind. And especially in this day and age of social media, where, I mean, everyone always says, like, oh my God, I want her arms, I want his abs, I want their back. People don't realize that, some people are just genetically blessed with that. But for body parts, I mean, for me, my back, just because I worked in, warehouses all throughout college, so you either got a really nice back or you quit. Those are basically the two options that were presented to you. But also being 6'3", I hope you can understand this too, but my legs are just absolutely shot, where, I mean, I have to train them into oblivion just to get them to look like any semblance I've worked them. I mean, I always said I could inject pure muscle into my calves and they wouldn't grow an ounce. Same with probably my thighs. And I still have, luckily with COVID, I don't have friends now when I go to the gym, because the gyms are, open now, but I'm still doing stuff at home, where they're just like, oh, hey, Ryan, you plan on working legs anytime this year? And it's like, you saw me train them yesterday. Come on, guys. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
Well, I'm sorry, I can't sympathize with you on that one. My legs are all right. But I think that So genetically, if you like, even if you look at my mother, we do just naturally have really small waists and larger lower halves. And with my track background, I was a jumper in track, so I was a powerhouse, and I was a sprinter. So I think with those things being my foundation, my legs are pretty well. In fact, this improvement season, I took a month off from, if not longer, from training my legs so that my upper body could catch up. So that was just recently. But when I first started, I love just a very nice upper body on a woman, just the nice round shoulders, the nice arms, a nice chest. And so that was something that I always focused on from day one. I always focused on that day one, and I still continue to, and you kind of see my efforts there, but I still feel like they're lagging behind. My back probably lags behind a little bit, and I have trouble posing, and so I can't really showcase what my back is really like made of right now. I need all the help I can get with that. That's another subject.
Oh yeah, that's coming up in the podcast. That's the number one myth that that's the number one thing that I would have never believed in a million years, is that posing is the hardest thing. But we're like 2 questions away from that. But yeah, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head with that. Posing is by far. But I mean, that's why I love asking that question, though, because with body parts, there's so many people that have different things. I mean, we've had short people that have problems with their legs, and then we've had tall people that have, it's just a wide variety. And it just shows for people. It's like, hey, it doesn't matter what you look like. It's people benefit from different ways, and people just have to learn and accept that. But you mentioned it before, and I always say that sleep is probably one of the most underrated things when it comes to the bodybuilding lifestyle that most people don't understand. I mean, even if you look at just me, the difference between 8 hours of rest and 6 hours of rest when it comes to the gym is astronomical. But what is the right amount of sleep that you try to get, and what are some ways that you try to get that sleep? Because I mean, you have a hectic schedule enough as it is, with the Army and also being a bodybuilder. I mean, those are basically 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah.
And being a mom, I gotta say that's a 3rd full-time job. So you basically have 3. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot on my plate. Yeah, I have my own business on the side too. So yeah, I definitely. I perform very well in chaos. I thrive in chaos. If there's more chaos in my life, it's actually less stressful for me, because I have this natural ability to be able to manage stress very well and be that person that is the, just kind of the center of reality. And, I lost my train of thought there, but.
Well, let me just say that we understand now why she went to Iraq 3 times, because for me, after one time, I'd be like, yeah, I'm fine not ever going back there again. But, she thrives in the chaos. So I was going to ask her, I was like, so why would you go back a second? But no, she thrives in the chaos. I understand that now, at least. But yeah, it's just a different mindset that you need to have. And do you think that the Army really prepared you for the mental game that bodybuilding is? Because for so many people, they don't understand that this is so much more of a mental sport than it is a physical sport.
Yeah, I think there's everyone takes on stress in a different way, and it's in their own way. And I don't think you can really prepare for it. I think you just have to have the ability to look at things in a rational manner. And that's hard to do, and especially in bodybuilding, because it's very much emotional, especially if you don't have a support system. And so, there's like bodybuilding syndrome, where you never think you're good enough, you never think you're big enough, you're too small, you're not lean enough, you're not on track. There's so much that plays with your head, and you can't really prepare for that. I don't think you can be a veteran of 10, 15, 20 shows, but I feel like the stress is always going to be there in the same way. It's just that how are you going to manage that stress? And the kind of stress that I am engaged in the Army is different. I'm a logistician. And so how I explain that to people who are not in the Army and don't know what that is I'm a professional problem solver. I can't not find a solution to anything. It's just not in my blood. I can't do it. So with that being said, I think that has prepared me to look at bodybuilding through the lens of rationality and have expectation management. And I think some people lack that, because they look at the Olympians and they see, oh, well, that's what I have to be to achieve greatness. And I don't think that's the case. I think you really have to take a step back and figure out, one, why are you doing this in the first place? Because that's going to manage a lot for you to begin with. If you're doing it for superficial reasons, then you're probably always going to be stressed and you're never going to find your purpose. But if you're doing it because you found your purpose and you find strength in bodybuilding, and this is just kind of your calling, and this is what you feel that you can be fulfilled in doing in life, then yeah, you can easily manage your stress, because you're going to do whatever it takes to achieve your goal and to fulfill yourself, because it comes from deep within. It's not a superficial feeling anymore. So I think people tend to get confused with those two things. They look at it from, well, I want to be this person because I want to be that person, instead of, well, I want to be this person because I want to be the best that I can be, and the best version of myself. And I think the latter is always going to trump, and that's going to profit over, the purpose that you think you're getting through the superficial reasons of, well, I just want their status, because that's really what they're looking at. You can't chase after that, because that's not you. So I think going into bodybuilding, everyone needs to understand, or it would behoove one to understand, well, why are you doing it to begin with? And understand that the people on the Olympia stage have a lot going for them. And that's not you. Your structure is different. There's genetics that play a huge role in it. There's conditioning that plays a huge role in it. And I don't mean conditioning as far as you're shredded and you're lean. I mean conditioning as far as, well, how long have they been in the sport? How long have they conditioned themselves to go through the on season and off season and the prep season, and who do they know to really gain the support that they need to get there in the first place? So I think having that realistic management and those expectations up front to kind of guide your way through will manage the stress for you. And like I said, if you're in it for superficial reasons, you're always going to be stressed, because you're not in it for yourself. You're in it for someone else. You're in it to prove something to someone that doesn't even matter, most likely. So it is a selfish sport, because it does have to be all about you, and you have to really be in love with it to be successful. And success doesn't necessarily mean that you're winning your show, that you're winning nationals, that you're winning your pro card, you're winning the Olympia. That doesn't necessarily mean. It's, what is it to you? And what does it mean to you to keep moving on? Because it's a very demanding sport, and you have to have the mental fortitude and the longevity to be able to deal with all of those things at once to be successful.
I've always said just stepping on that stage should be a victory for everyone. Just because what you go through on a prep, I mean, that's a highlight for me in and of myself. I mean, with my height, if I ever did anything bodybuilding wise, I mean, I probably would not be in the best condition to win. But it's just that achievement that you have is just something that I think so many people should realize. But just with this sport too, and with all the myths and stereotypes that come along with it, and just even in the gym too, I mean, I love to bust this one especially, and we talked about this right before we started recording, and I mean, it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram, but there are still so many women that have that fear that if they walk into the gym and they pick up one dumbbell and they do one curl, they're going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And first of all, I wish I had that type of self-confidence, because I would be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company right now. But I mean, it's just so not the case, but a lot of people still struggle with that. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't have that fear, I bet you still hear that all the time. How do you like to respond to that?
No. There's days where I'm doubting myself, and there's days where I'm like, I don't know if I'm good enough for the show that I'm preparing for. And I always have an image of myself when I first started bodybuilding, and I was doing a shoulder workout because it's my favorite. And I took a selfie, and I was like, oh man, I'm so swole. Man, look at these little calves. Oh my gosh, there was nothing there. I look back at that picture, there was nothing there. I was really skinny, and I'm tall and lanky. So I was just like, oh, okay. I've come a long way, but that was after months of training, months. And I didn't have a cap on my shoulder or anything. And so, yeah, I think it's more of a legacy misconception, but I think we're moving away from that. I have several clients that I build their programs and they're like, oh, I'm eating a lot of food and I'm lifting a lot of weight. Like, what does this mean? And I explain to them, how body composition is formulated and how it works to your benefit. And some of them won't believe me and they'll drop me and say, well, I'm going to get too big and bulky. This isn't for me. And then others are, they kind of trust the process, which I much appreciate. But I think with, kind of the new marketing and the new, I guess, female strength that's being published in the media now and that's available, I think we're starting to move away from, thinking that women are going to get bulky. And I think they understand the concept there. And I think that's becoming the new norm and the new, desired physique. Especially when you see all the CrossFit women, those girls look amazing. And they're everywhere. They're plastered everywhere. And I think we're slowly moving away from that. But I think there are still some of those, lagging people behind. They're like, oh no, I'm going to get huge. It's not often where, I walk around and I get more compliments than I do not that, oh, you look like a man, or you're too big, or I don't normally get that. Actually, I get a lot of women who are like, wow, I wish I looked like you. I wish, that is very achievable, I think. And it is. And I've been training consistently for, probably 6 years, but it's been consistently, inconsistently, if you can put that together. And this is kind of the physique that I've achieved for my height, which is not too bad, I don't think. But I hope that misconception is moving away and women understand that, muscle is a good thing. Muscle is going to benefit you. It's going to give you longevity. It's going to give you strength. Just being in the gym, you're already going against social norms anyway. So, I think that's definitely something that someone should look forward to more than maybe the aftermath and the benefits of the physique that you'll get too. It's just that inner confidence of just being there.
Oh, and you answered my next question too, because I always say that confidence boost is probably the one thing that impacts women so much more than men, but it's just such a big deal for so many people. But now we get to, posing. I'm just going to say, it's for so many people, and I would have never guessed that in a million years for the compares that I had on that. For so many of them, posing is the hardest thing. It's harder than your nutrition. It's harder than the workouts. I like to compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver, you can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser, you can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What is your experience with posing been like? And especially since you're taller too, posing's got to be, just even harder than someone who's, like 5'5" or something like that, which makes it even harder.
I feel like I'm so bad at posing, and it is hard. Gosh, it's hard. I will struggle with it forever. I know it. I've gone through several posing coaches. I've done the online method. I don't think that particularly works well with me. I actually will meet with a new posing coach this weekend, so I'm pretty excited about that, and it's local. So I think that'll help me out. But it is definitely, I think it's underrated. And I think people go in and they're like, oh, you just hit a pose and that's it. When in all actuality, when you're on stage, that's really the only thing that matters, because that's the only thing that you can change to benefit you up there. And if you don't get it right, if you look like a bag of crap, then you're not going to win. Even if you have the best physique, it's everything. It really is. And it is the hardest thing. And I don't necessarily think that it's posing that is hard, that is difficult. I think it is being an entertainer and emulating maybe a personality that you're not comfortable with. Like for me, I'm pretty stoic. I'm kind of serious when I'm in the gym. I like to do my work and I like to get out, no conversations, no questions asked. And then when it comes to posing, I hear a lot of coaches that say you want to emulate that personality that you would have on stage when you're practicing. And I can't do that to save my life. I just can't. I can't get into it. But when I'm on stage at an actual show, it just clicks. It's just, I can embody someone that's not me to get me through that point. Because that's probably the less desirable aspect of this whole thing for me, is being on the stage, which is very counterintuitive. But yeah, I know for me personally, I take it for granted. I don't do it enough because it is difficult, but it's difficult because it's uncomfortable, I think. And it's uncomfortable because it's this personality that's not me, but I have to showcase because that's what wins, you know? So for me, it's been difficult. It has been finding that balance of, okay, I'm going to go on stage, I'm going to showcase my physique and, you know, do my mandatory poses, which is figure. So yeah, I got like 4 poses, which is not that big of a deal. But at the same time, add that personality to it that I might be lacking. And that's something that I have to reel in and embody and project something that's not necessarily me, because no one wants like a very stern looking woman.
Just basically just no movement, no extra movement at all. Just basically just like a robot, basically just coming on. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, and then that's not to say I don't know how to have fun. I definitely can. I can have a good time. But yeah, I think that's the one thing that definitely stresses me out. And I do remember specifically at Miami, I was overthinking it so much that I was overposing, and it did me wrong. I had a show 2 days prior, and I was posing very beautifully and confidently, and for some reason that when I went to a national show, it was my first national show ever, I just freaked out and I did too much posing. So yeah, you definitely have to find that balance too, that you can do too little and you can definitely do too much. And I did too much trying to overcompensate. So, but it was a good lesson learned.
Now explain overposing. So did you just like flex too hard and you were just like too much, or how do you overpose? Because that's the first time I've ever heard someone say overpose.
Yeah, so it is maybe posing coaches might disagree with me, but for me, I was overposing because in my head, I was trying to focus so much on hitting like my back pose, for instance, that I was overarching my back and I was over spreading my lats, that my erectors took over and pinched together. So it actually shortened my back instead of making me look wider. And then we were kind of spaced a little weird too, and we were too close together, and that kind of we were very close together for the tallest class. And so I don't think they took that in consideration. And they, so when they spread us apart, you know, you were still just kind of stuck in the old way of posing, like you were still together. So it was just kind of, you know, when you're on stage, it's so different, you know, that you can practice and get it right all like day in, day out. But when you're on that stage, sometimes, you know, your environment just takes kind of control over you and your thought process, I think, and kind of throws you off a little bit.
No, yeah, it's such a mind game, especially when it comes down to posing too. But a question I ask all the bikini and figure girls that I have on here, because I mean, you have to wear high heels, and being 6'1", that's already enough. You don't need to wear heels, basically. You're already tall enough. But what has your experience been like wearing those heels? Because for so many people, that is the biggest struggle for them, even more than posing sometimes.
Yeah, it's awful. Yeah, that's another thing that I actually have to practice, because on a daily basis, yeah, I don't wear heels. Why do I need to wear heels? I particularly like to walk around barefoot, but I went to a show and I had a set of heels that I practice in, and so that I wouldn't wear out my show heels. Well, those heels were much different, and I didn't realize it. So right before I was supposed to go on stage, I'm walking like a baby deer because I didn't know how to walk in these heels. And so that's another lesson learned. But it is hard. it is hard because it's like I see it sometimes. I see those shorter girls, and maybe it's because they are so used to wearing heels on a daily basis with their, their cute regular outfit.
Yeah.
And they walk in them like nothing. For me, it's just not possible. I've gone to the point where maybe I'll wear them around the house, but I'm just so active that it's just not feasible for me to do that. So, yeah, I almost have to put as much effort into practicing wearing heels as I do practicing my posing.
Yep.
It's just more time.
No, it's an ever evolving process, and yeah, I mean, it's like, don't these people go through enough already, and then you're making them wear heels when they walk on stage? It's like, these people suffer enough through preps. It's like, give them a break just once. But when you're on that stage, does time seem to slow down, or does it seem to speed up, or is it somewhat of a mixture?
I think time kind of slows down, but like I speed up. So that's something I realized at nationals as well. Was that I have to practice doing everything very slowly because your adrenaline is going, your excitement is going, and naturally you're just going to move a lot faster, and it doesn't look very fluid on stage. It looks a little choppy, and it looks rushed. So it's kind of weird. Like the processes are always very seamless and straightforward. And it seems like everything's slow, especially in comparisons. It feels like I'm up there for hours. But the individuals, it seems just so fast. And I think that's because I think that's just self-inflicted.
Yep. No, and it's different for a lot of people. I mean, it's almost impossible to really gouge what, is really going to happen. But one thing that I found is so fascinating about this is that, just with all the manipulations and all the dieting that you have to do, what is your go-to post-show meal?
Oh, I love hamburgers, so it would probably be a hamburger. And I can't go too crazy. My metabolism and my body just doesn't like anything outside of my typical meal prep foods. Pretty much what I eat pretty clean all year round because it just doesn't work with my body any other way. And so I've even had to go as far as cutting out whey proteins and certain supplements because they don't work very well for me. And if I eat too much processed foods, same thing, my body's just gonna retaliate. So it's usually a burger, and I do very extensive, thorough research to find the best one in that locale. And if not, it would almost always be Cracker Barrel's pancakes.
I always said if I could, I would just rent out a Five Guys and just be like, here's $1,000. I'm buying you out for the night. Feed me until I either die, puke, or pass out. But that also leads me into another myth and stereotype that I love to bust. And I mean, there are so many people that in this world, I should say, that just don't understand that for bodybuilders, that look that you present on stage, that is not a sustainable look. We have so many people who've, been like, oh, they just they work that hard. They must just be able to look like that year round. That is not the case. How have you dealt with that? Because for so many people, that's a struggle in and of itself, just realizing that look that I present on stage, I'm not going to be able to maintain that look 24/7. Has that gotten easier for you as your career's gone on to accept that?
Yeah. And every prep is different too. And I think with every prep that I feel like it gets easier. It's not easy, but it gets easier to kind of deal with and kind of understand, because your body just changes so much and how it responds to everything different every single year. And so I think it's more of an adjustment for your mind that you have to understand. It goes back to that expectation management I talked about. You have to understand you can't look like that all year round. And as awesome as it is for the 2 weeks that you look really, really shredded and amazing, especially for women, it is not sustainable, and it should not be sustainable. And I wouldn't say rush into an off-season look right after a show. Definitely ease into it. But I think a lot of women have issues dealing with with the mentality, because your body's going to go back. Your body's going to fight you to go back to homeostasis anyway, and you're gonna have to let it happen. And I know a lot of women who have, been depressed and have self-destructive tendencies to kind of deal with how their body's changing back, and you see yourself in this lens of, you think you're out of shape or you're fat, or like just all this poor body image issues, and in reality you're not. And so I think having that support system too is a huge deal, because that's what's going to keep you stable and like honed into reality that everything is okay, everything's going to be fine. So like for me, I understand that I can't stay a certain way all year round. So when I do go into my off-season look, I'm totally okay with it. I don't gain too much crazy weight anyway. So I don't know. I'm interested to see how it happens this year. But I'm hoping that, that I'll be able to just like maintain my mind the most, because I think that's the hardest part. You can always change your body, but it's harder to change your mind, and it's harder to change your mindset, especially if it's already in a negative way. So I think that's probably the utmost importance to manage for that one.
Like going back to I should honestly just rename this podcast Trial and Error. That's the one thing that I've honestly been thinking about doing, and just the mindset too. It's, if I could preach one thing on this podcast, is that, it's so much more of a mental game than it is physical. But two of the questions that I love to ask all my health and fitness guests that I have on the podcast, for the first one, there were so many benefits to me when I started working out and getting bigger and stronger. But the one negative thing is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars or bottled water or anything that's sealed on tight. You're basically the go-to strength person. Still, whenever I come home to my parents' house, I basically, if I ever go out and shop for them, I basically have to lift the car into the driveway and carry in the groceries myself, being the good son that I am. But has that been a similar experience with you, where people just take one look at you and they just assume that you can do favors for them?
Not like that. I guess the common one is for me, like if I'm in a store, someone will ask me to get something that's really high up on the shelf for them, which I love. I don't even mind. It doesn't even bother me. I love helping people, so in any capacity. So it's just, I think it's adorable. But as far as like the strength goes, I think people just have an assumption that I can do X, Y, Z. And I will X, Y, Z. So, they don't debate me, or they won't antagonize me or anything like that, which is kind of how I like it. So people leave me alone. So I think that's kind of the cool part about it, and the thing that I appreciate, but not to the point where I'm just unapproachable, and people don't ask for my help and my perspective, because I feel like through everyone you can learn something, whether it's through their mistakes or their successes. You should, definitely lend an ear to see what they have to say, if they have something to say.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, I always said being 6'3" and being a guy, it's a double-edged sword, where I could have zero muscle at all and just be like, oh yeah, tall guy, but it's definitely different. But number one for bodybuilders, I think, is a thing that no one ever talks about, but it's so important, is clothing options. I've had guys on here that are in shape too, and they have enough clothing options, debacles as it is. But for women, if you have big broad shoulders, dresses aren't your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time, where bodybuilders just aren't built for jeans. And especially being 6'1", you already, if you had no muscle at all, you'd still deal with a ton of clothing options issues. But what have been some ways that you have found to sort of compensate for that? Because I always say too, you basically have to have two wardrobes: your prep wardrobe and your off-season wardrobe.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Well, when I'm in prep season, I'm so focused. So like prep has gotten to the point where it is my homeostasis, and everything in my life falls around it rather than it falling around everything else. So I've been able to manage that pretty easily. So that makes things a lot easier. So when I'm in prep, I'm almost always in my workout clothes, which I love, because there's no thought to that. Or I'm in my uniform, which again, I don't have to think about that. But as far as, for my off season, I do, I've been able to first off, find somewhere that can supply me clothes that meets my height requirement. So that's been a plus. I can only shop at that store because they can fit me. I have a very small waist, but I have large quads and glutes, and so I've been able to get clothes there that kind of support me in that way. I will not buy clothes for a prep season. I will just kind of deal with it because they fit, but they just don't fit my waist, and I can deal with that. As far as I've always had issues with my shoulders because I am broad, and so I've always had to buy sizes, almost sometimes 2 sizes over what I actually fit into, and then I just get them tailored, which is a pain in the butt. So yeah, I haven't quite figured that one out either, but I tend to veer towards clothes that are more like loose fitting and looking and comfortable versus like jeans and, polo shirts that are just going to be a headache for me to wear on a daily basis. So that's the story of my life, though. I've always had clothing problems.
Oh, I mean, I say, yeah, the moment I tell most female bodybuilders, especially, it's like, you better know a nice tailor. That's the one thing that you basically,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a must-have. But I did this question before New Year's on my Instagram page, and it was, so what's one body part that people are most looking forward to training in the new year? And the choices were arms, back, abs, legs, and shoulders, and arms won by like 20% because I think there's a lot of guys that must have voted on it apparently. But so I told them that I'd asked all my guests this. So what do you train for arms? What does an arm day look like for you? And I mean, especially being with your height too. I mean, you got those lengthy arms too, so you got to really develop them a lot better.
Yeah, you're right. My arms, I feel like, have always been something I've had to work on and actually focus on to get them to look proportionate to everything else. And I'm just now seeing some like nice development. Like I don't have that space in between my my shoulder and my bicep as much. It's still kind of there, but I'm working on it. But I've had to change it up. My body responds very quickly to my training, so I have to change it very quickly. And I have really out of the ordinary endurance when it comes to resistance training. So I have to really get creative with the way that I train my body because it just adapts so fast. So for arms specifically, I've had to have an arm day to address my needs, but also put arms on days where I would do back and chest. So to supplement those days as well. And I think doing that, I've seen probably the best benefit. I will see my strength gains before I see my physical gains any day of the week. So I think that's probably what's been helpful. And I have to do a variety of techniques. I can't just do hypertrophy training. I have to do power training as well. And I have to mix it up all the time. And so, yeah, my arms have struggled, definitely. So I'm still working on that one.
Hey, you're talking to a guy, so I mean that's the story of every guy's life. Basically, I mean, I always say guys in the gym communicate through their biceps. Basically, we just talk to each other that way, and that's how. But it's an ever evolving struggle as well. But if we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding journey? Where would you like to be at just in your overall life? What are some goals that you would like to have achieved if we were to talk a year from today?
Oh man, so a year from today, well, bodybuilding wise, I hope to have been a pro and at least competed in a pro show or am about to compete in a pro show. I feel like if I get, if I earn my pro card this year, I feel like I probably have to take 2 years to build just to be competitive, just for how my frame is. So we'll see. But yeah, at a minimum, I would. My achievement this year is to earn my pro card. As far as like professionally, I hope I'm up from promotion. My first look for promotions, that would be awesome. and yeah, I just continue my happy, healthy relationship with my son and my husband, and that would be ideal. I'm a pretty simple gal. I don't require a lot.
Yeah, and that's great, and we wish you all that. And is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Sure. Well, my husband and my son, without them, I definitely wouldn't. They are my support. They're really the only two people that matter to me in this world. Um, and my coach, I'm coached by Shelby Starnes.
Yep.
He's had me under his wing for 3 years now, and um, has, vicariously taught me. So, yeah, and I would actually like to thank like the people on Instagram that follow me, because I get so much support from the people that follow me that I would have never thought was imaginable ever. I got into this sport just to kind of fulfill a need that I had and something that I was missing and something that I've wanted and desired to do for a long time. And I didn't have support from anywhere. And then I start going on social media, and I see all these people, and they're reaching out to me, and they're promoting me, and they're encouraging me on a daily basis, like people like you. It's like, I had no idea this community existed, and it's so humbling to be a part of it and to have people I don't even know that support me and encourage me and have my back, and it's so humbling, and I'm so thankful for all of those people on my social media accounts that, just pop in to say hi and say, you got this. And I think I couldn't ever put a price on that. I think that just means so much to me. And that really does definitely keep me going through my days where I'm just mind dumping.
This community has done so much, and it's one of those communities where when I first, because I didn't plan on even having bodybuilders on, I just started out with health and fitness, and then they're like, oh, you should have bodybuilders on, and I started that, and I realized that this community, it's a lot more nicer than a lot of people would expect, and it's a lot of tight-knit people, and that's just awesome. But lastly, I mean, especially during this coronavirus with a lot of people being indoors a lot more, I always say this is the perfect time that people can start to get in shape and really start to change things up, because you have all the free time in the world. A lot of people do. But what advice would you have for someone who's just looking to get started? Because I say for so many people, just taking that first step is the hardest thing, and it gets so much easier. And even doing stuff at home, if you can just have a base, by the time gyms open up or by the time there's a vaccine, I mean, it's so much easier than to just transition to the gym then and make it easier.
Yeah, I think well, I think for the people who don't have access to anything, my advice would be to reflect on yourself. And, if being fit and healthy and active, or maybe going into bodybuilding, is something you're looking at doing, then do the mental preparation for it first. You will save yourself so much heartache and so much headache down the way. And it, like I said, have expectation management. Talk to people, reach out to the community. Everyone is so helpful and strong and willing to just be a participant in any capacity. So, and you have nothing to lose. Nobody has anything to lose ever. If there's really something that you desire, in anything in life, you just do it. Really, you have nothing to lose. You have only something to gain. And if you feel like failure is not something to be gained, then you're wrong, because that can teach you something in itself. And many of us have failed time and time and time again. And, that just doesn't stop you. It just makes you stronger. It makes you more wise, and it makes you more ready for, the inevitable future that is beholden unto you. So, I would say that's what I would say. If you don't have access to anything, reflect. If you do have access to something, then be a contributing member to people who are in need and may not have the means to reach out. Make yourself available. If you have we all have information that can be shared, successes, failures. Share those things, because you never know how someone's hurting or how someone might be struggling right now, and you can lend so much to someone by just saying that, just showing them that you care enough to ask.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, I always say, like, just go for a walk then too. I mean, it's like, that's the best thing. Just go ahead and get started. I mean, just get active. But again, you guys, we cannot thank Christina enough for coming on the podcast. And Christina, I couldn't think of a better way to end this. Could you give us a front double bicep, and everyone just, if you need motivation to go to the gym, she'll basically give it to you right now. Oh my God. All right, I need to hit the gym now, everyone. This is just absolutely ridiculous. My self-confidence just goes throughout the roof if I ever ask guests for that. So that's why I rarely do it, just because it's like, oh my God, now I got to go work out now. But Christina, again, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, again, you guys, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.